Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this briefing. I'm Eli Klutstein, JPC's Media and Content Director. Today, we mark 47 days since the beginning of the war, which broke out after the vicious surprise terror attack by Hamas on Israel. In the time that has since passed, the IDF entered Gaza, fought fiercely with the terrorists in the street, and has managed to maintain its control of northern Gaza. Yet today, for the first time since the war began, Israel agreed to temporarily hold its fire for several days in exchange for the release of 50 women and children from the cruel captivity of Hamas. To speak about these developments, the Jerusalem Press Club welcomes back Dr. Eyal Hulata, the most recent former National Security Advisor, who joins us from Washington. Hello, Dr. Hulata. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Eli, and hello, everyone. We're doing this brief in the wake of an agreement to release hostages, abducted women and children. Of course, we will only know tomorrow that the terms of the deal have been properly dealt with by Hamas and endorsed by all of the factions for this to be a truce that is that can be held for the duration of this deal. And naturally, you will devote most of the time for that. I think it's also important to continue to look at what's happening in the north of Israel with Hezbollah, and also to see how Hezbollah will respond to this. Of course, this comes from Iranian push, especially when it comes to Hezbollah and the Houthis. We should also monitor very closely what happened with the ship Liberty that was snatched off the coast of Yemen and dragged to Hodeidah. This is an escalation. We haven't seen something like that happening in this front, and the fact that the Yemenites, the Houthis, can do that is an escalation. How that plays out with the way the American CENTCOM look at this is something that is debated. It's rather far from Israel, despite the fact that the Houthis are trying to claim that this is an Israeli ship. This is not an Israeli ship. Of course, there is ownership of Israeli businessmen, but Israel cannot be responsible for any ship in any place. Those waters are protected by CENTCOM, and this is something that we need to follow and see how this plays out as well. Let's go back to the deal. As you know, I mean, this has been widely discussed. The negotiation have taken place for several weeks now. The fact that at the end it was possible to agree for this rather not large enough, in my view, or I think in anybody's view, but hopefully to encompass all of the women and children that are alive hostages in Gaza. Hopefully, this is what we will see. Hamas has tried to break them into groups and to select between them, to give priority to foreign nationals. Israel has objected to all of that, and we said that families will come together, mothers and children, all the siblings together, and hopefully this is what we will see. It's also important to say that the fact that in response we are releasing terrorists, female and teenagers, there's something there. I'm telling you as reporters, again, this is my view. I think it is important to pay attention. There are some who are trying to create some kind of balance that Hamas are releasing women and children and we are releasing women and children. Well, Hamas are releasing hostages that were abducted from their beds, and Israel is releasing terrorists who attempted murder of Israelis, of others, even if they're women and teenagers. And the fact that female and teenagers are participating in terror activity of Hamas in itself is an issue that doesn't get covered. I'm just saying this because I think it's important not to make a false balance between what Hamas is releasing and what Israel is releasing. We're releasing terrorists. And the fact that we need to release 3 for every 1 Israeli says something about us as a people, as a religion, and the emphasis that we put about returning the abducted that we have alive at the earliest possibility, even if the pay for that is 3 times higher in number of people. This is who we are. You all remember Gilad Shalit deal. We released 1,000 terrorists to get him back. One of them is Yahya Sinwar, as you all know, and this is how this turns out. But this is it. We will continue to aim at releasing and rescuing our own in this way. The second aspect, of course, is the truce. As you have seen and know, most of you probably have this from other sources as well. This is not the first option of the IDF, right? I mean, this is coming in a stage where the military progress was gaining traction. This may have been one of the reasons why Sinwar ultimately agreed to have this, because they are in need of this truce. The fact that they demanded 6 hours a day without our surveillance, we must ask ourselves, who negotiate in good faith ask for 6 hours of us not surveilling? What are they planning to do in this 6 hours a day, moving from side to side? This is a war. This is a war with a terrorist organization, and they will do whatever they can to use this in their advantage. We should expect the IDF to continue to collect intelligence to the extent they can. We should expect them to use the time as well to prepare for the future stages of the war, because this won't end at the end of the truce, or at least it shouldn't end at the end of the truce. Until Hamas is eliminated as the rule of Gaza, there is no hope for Gaza. And to achieve that, we will need either for them to leave Gaza or to die. I'm talking about Sinwar, I'm talking about death, I'm talking about the high set of ranking leaders of the terror organization, and Israel will need to continue that. My hope is that the international pressure after the truce has ended will not prevent that. My hope is that the government of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, will not cave to pressure with this. This is what the citizens of Israel expect of their leaders, and this is what should happen. He did say that this is the first phase of releasing the hostages. And of course, we should expect that more stages will come in the future. There are also elderly and handicapped and injured people, and then there are also soldiers and adult men that are there. And there are also a large number, I'm not sure I know exactly the amount, but a large number of hostages that were either taken dead or killed in Gaza. And we will need to get them home, all back home before this war ends. As we've done before, I wanted to give enough time to your questions. There are always more questions the time that we have. So Eli, please, let's divert this to the issues that the journalists want to hear about. Go ahead.
Great. Great. Thank you, Dr. Hulata. And before we start, I would encourage everyone to use the Q&A option you have down there on the screen to present your questions. I want to start with a question many people, ask in Israel in general, and we got it also from journalists. Isn't this deal a continuation of the failed idea or conception that Hamas can be dealt with in a rational way, as some claim? And maybe a continuance to this same question is, what message do you think this deal is sending to Hezbollah and Iran? Doesn't it, encouraging them to try and prioritize kidnapping as their main goal?
Yeah. That's a tough question. I think this is the reason this is a dilemma for all of us, including for myself. I said that yesterday live on CNN in an interview. This is who we are, right? I mean, this is this a weakness of the Jewish people? Well, maybe it is, but this is who we are, and we will prioritize bringing back people alive. We have a saying in Hebrew: "Kol hametzil nefesh achat, kilo etzim olam umlo'o." Saving one life is like saving the entire world, and we'll continue to do that. I had criticism on how the Gilad Shalit deal went. I think it was very important to bring Gilad Shalit back home. Was it justified to release 1,000 terrorists with the future leadership of Hamas? Debatable. When I negotiated, or when I led the coordination of the negotiations in 2021, 2022 to release Avera Mengistu, Hisham Sayed, and to bring back the bodies of Adar Golding and Oron Shaul, the numbers were totally different. And Hamas knew that, and the process continued even though they knew that. And only we'll never know what would have happened if we could have continued that negotiation back then. So this is the case. And Israel has many weaknesses going into this war. Israel also has a weakness that we abide to the international law. I know that we're being criticized sometimes that we do not, but this isn't true. We are. Israel has been criticized for entering Shifa Hospital in Ramtisi, but we endangered our soldiers going by foot into the tunnels and the basement underneath the hospital without the aerial support we usually do, because we will not bombard hospitals from the air, even when they have been evacuated, because there are many things that we won't do as a people that the IDF won't do as a military, and this is one of them. Does that give incentives to them to abduct? Well, Hamas clearly thought that this is what they needed to do on October 7th. We've never faced something so large. I will say, how much larger can it be? And also for Hezbollah. They abducted soldiers back in 2006, and this opened the Second Lebanese War in the way that it did. We will need to be better in this. We need to take good care of our civilians. This should be the response to the Israeli public. They need to know that the military protects them, which has failed on October 7th, but we'll continue to strive to get the hostages back, and I'm proud of that.
Okay, thank you. Ahmad Qureshi is a reporter from Pakistan, is asking, could this deal open the door for a compromise where Israel steps back from the stated goal of, destroying Hamas as a terror group? And, as it is a deal, in a way, Israel recognizes the other side in it.
So no, I don't think so. I think that the fact that we're having a hostage swap, nobody should be confused with that and our approach to Hamas. There were times where Israeli governments, including the government I served as National Security Advisor, thought that we can reconcile our differences with Hamas, and that eventually Hamas will take care of its own people more than they want to murder us. This is one of the paradigms that has failed completely in October 7th. I never believed that Hamas will be so brutal to the extent that they will do something so horrific as they did on October 7th. But this is what Sinwar decided to do. And once they did that, he should die. And that will be the outcome. And nobody needs to confuse the fact that we're dealing with them through mediators, by the way, of course, not directly, to get our hostages back. The aim of the war hasn't changed. It shouldn't change. And I hope that the government does not cave on that.
Okay, that's very clear. Bettina Meyer from ARD, that's the German public broadcast, is asking about some economic perspectives of the war. If it drags on and, the Palestinian economy, especially in Gaza, but also in Israel, the economy is being affected very much. And, people lose their jobs in Gaza and in the West Bank. Do you see that as a danger, as a security risk that, can make things even worse, maybe even in the West Bank specifically?
We need to make clear distinctions between those, because not the same things apply at different stages. Let's start with Gaza. I think that if Hamas was worried about the well-being of its people in Gaza, they shouldn't have started what they did on October 7th. The war cannot end until the goals are fulfilled. And does that mean that the situation in Gaza deteriorates? Yes. I'm, of course, worried about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And I've been arguing, and those of you who have heard me before know that I've been consistent in this. This is important for Israel. We need to do whatever we can to maintain a certain level of humanitarian situation in Gaza. If this goes bad, this isn't good. I think this isn't right in absolute terms, but also on the operational aspects. This is one of the things that will determine how long we can operate during this war. So the humanitarian situation in Gaza worries me very, very much, not the economic situation in Gaza. Economic situation in Gaza is ruined. Hamas brought this on its own people. Many of the buildings have been shattered. Israel has made sure that the people have a chance to leave before we do that, so that there will be a limited amount of unintentional casualties. Unfortunately, not all of them left. And this will continue until Hamas is removed from Gaza. There is no future for Gaza as long as Hamas controls Gaza. And I think we all need to be tuned on this, because it's true. As for other places, Israel, you mentioned West Bank. The situation West Bank is worrying. I think that the fact that there is no uprising in the West Bank is important. The fact that the IDF is very proactive and vigilant against Hamas cells in the West Bank has proven itself, and will need to continue to do so. When it's possible to bring back the West Bank economy to operation, we should do that. This is not our choice to make this linkage. From an Israeli perspective, there is a distinction between what happens in Gaza, ruled by Hamas, and what happens in the West Bank, ruled by Palestinian Authority. If only the Palestinian Authority will step up and allow the maintaining of normal life in West Bank while there is a war waging in Gaza. This will determine how this happens. As for the Israeli economy, well, we should expect that in the following weeks, we will start to release reservists, and the Israeli economy will return to some kind of normality. I came back yesterday from a week in Israel, and there's a total difference between how the life is in Tel Aviv and even in Jerusalem, to places that were closer to the border. Tel Aviv, I wouldn't say went back to normal, but pretty much so, and so is Jerusalem. And so is most of the north, because Hezbollah did not wage a full war and attack on our towns. Of course, there are about 20 or maybe 250,000 Israelis who left their homes from south and north. They're directly affected, and the economy clearly didn't go back to what it did, but gradually it will. Schools need to reopen in most of Israel. Businesses need to come back to work in most of Israel, while we continue to go after the leadership of Hamas. This is what we should expect, and I think this is what will happen.
Okay, you spoke about the humanitarian situation in southern Gaza, basically, and we have Paul Adams from the BBC asking if you anticipate any U.S. pushback when the IDF decides to launch, a ground operation in the south. And I want to add to that another question of a Spanish reporter asking if we have any kind of plan or solution for the Hamas leadership in the south. Are we going to, do a forced displacement to Sinai or something like that? Do we have anything in mind?
So, I cannot speak on behalf of the government to say what they have in mind. I can tell you what are the options. I think that the first option is, and I'm sure that there is active intel gathering for this and operational planning, is to take them out. I would expect that there is an idea of where they are. Clearly, they're not in the north of Gaza, but I think this was the case from early on. They flee to the south with the civilian population. We knew that this was a risk that was taken, but we should have. That was not a reason not to ask the civilian population of the north to move to the south. Many of the leaders moved to the south, and they're hiding in the south. So one option is to locate them and get them. Of course, another option is to bring some kind of a structure that would make them leave Gaza. I'd be surprised if they want to do that. I would imagine they would rather die in Gaza than flee outside. But this option is not only on the table. I would assume that they know it, and they already have been offered this option before. And I think what we should understand from that is that this war, even if it changes its form, can last a long period of time. I said that before about the truce. I think it's also important to say that now. Maybe it won't be in the time of this government. Maybe it was the time of another government in Israel. But I personally believe that there is no future for Gaza as long as Hamas is ruler of Gaza. We need to eliminate them, and there is no one that will do it for us. So there was a question about the American pressure. The Americans, of course, are very worried about the humanitarian situation, and of course they want the war to end. But at the same note, and I know this firsthand, they understand that we need to eradicate the leadership of Hamas, and they also recognize how difficult this is. They fought in Iraq, they fought in other places. They know how to fight in urban areas. It's difficult. I think the military is cognizant that even though Gaza is small, it is more difficult operationally to deal with. Our enemies have prepared for decades for this, and clearly over the last few years, and they're entrenched very, very severely in human urban civilian lives, and this is the case. And I think the Americans understand that, and think this is one of the reasons we're getting the support. I think they're getting good answers from the IDF about how we conduct our military operation, but this still cannot last forever. At a certain point in time, the ground operation will need to change into a different way of fighting. And if we weren't able to get Hamas leadership by then we will continue to do that. Otherwise, just to give you an example, I'm certain that Sinwar knows that if he tries at a certain point in time to get out and sit on an armchair on a hill of rubble the way he did after Guardian of the Walls, he should look up, because there will be a missile coming down on him. This will not end in a way that he can continue to rule Gaza the way he did before, even if it takes time. That is not, maybe this is not a nice answer and clearly not a very optimistic answer. But Sinwar clearly knew when he went on this horrific attack on October 7, he has broken all of the rules and all of the criteria. Nothing will be returned to what it was before October 7 from an Israeli perspective. He should have expected that, and I'm sure he did. So this will be the consequences of it.
Okay, maybe last two questions on Gaza before we move on to other fronts. The first one is, what about the Islamic Jihad? Like, we know this deal of ceasefire is with Hamas, but can we estimate what will happen with the Jihad Islami if IDF is gonna react if they shoot, for instance? And the other question by Daniel Estrin from the NPR is, what is Sinwar's strategy with the hostage deal now, and what is his strategy for the next stages of the war, if we can estimate that?
So about Palestinian Islamic Jihad, I think that it is very clear that Israel, the IDF, makes no distinction between Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad at this point. I was National Security Advisor during Rise of Dawn in summer of 22. We made a very clear distinction between Islamic Jihad and Hamas. Hamas made it clear then that they had no interest to get into the war. We were in election period, so we also didn't have the incentive to go into a wide war, and we ended the war with Islamic Jihad without Hamas participating. This happened again during Netanyahu's government about a year ago. Some people say that both these events, maybe the second more than the first one, were part of the deception operation by Sinwar to make us understand or feel that they have other intentions. Maybe that's true. That could be true. But in any case, at this point, Israel does not make that distinction between Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And this is it. If Islamic Jihad will break the truce that we made with Hamas, from an Israel perspective, it is as if Hamas broke the truce in this war, and this is one of the weaknesses of a deal that lasts 4 days before we get all of the 53. I'm sure that everyone who were involved would have rather get them all in one a day and not spread on a few days. But this was something Hamas insisted on, and if they break the truce, they break the truth. We need to also all to consider that, of course, the influence of Iran on Islamic Jihad is stronger than on Hamas. I think also on Hamas it's quite strong, but clearly on Islamic Jihad it's stronger. And I'm sure that the intel people and the operational people are cognizant of the possibility that Iran will try to force them to break the truce while it's happening. This is a very fragile arrangement done with an enemy, so we need to be worried on those options. Hopefully, they will do the right thing and allow us to get all of the women and children, but nothing is certain, and it will all be over only when it's over.
Okay, let's move on to the northern front, maybe. And Yaakov Lapin from the Jewish News Syndicate is asking, how can northern Israelis return to their home with Radwan death squads on the border? Are we going to put there a buffer zone maybe? And, what's the potential escalation with Hezbollah at the moment?
Yeah. So again, I'm not a part of the system. I can tell you what I think about it. Clearly, the civilian population who left our northern border, it will be very difficult to bring them back with the withdrawal on the border. It's true, and the government needs to be very proactive on this. Even if we thought before October 7th that something like this cannot happen, we cannot say that after October 7th. And we need to give solutions to the people. The government needs to give solution to the civilians before moving back. I think that what the IDF is doing over the last few weeks with Radwan is quite effective. About 80, I think, terrorists, mostly Radwan, have been killed over the last few weeks, and they're not able to target our soldiers in an effective way. We have one civilian worker from the electricity company that was killed. If I'm not mistaken, that's the only one that was killed. Eli, am I mistaken? I think not.
No, and before that, we had several troops killed in
Oh yes, of
battles.
course. In the beginning, we had. Yeah, you're right. In the beginning, we had several troops that are killed. If Hezbollah could kill more, they would kill more. And I think they know this. But this is not sufficient. So, for instance, I don't know if the government included Hezbollah in the truce. This was not part of what they published on the decisions. So if Hezbollah continues to operate close to the border in the Lebanon, we should continue to strike them the way we did before. And there is no truce with Hezbollah. How this will end, it's a good question. I would expect, if I had a hand in it, I would push very strongly for pushing Radwan to the north. We've been talking a lot, and some of you about the 1701 that was never endorsed. Hezbollah has violated it from the outset, and they're operating very close to the northern border. There's no reason for that, right? So who bears responsibility for that UN Security Council resolution that haven't been granted? Now, of course, as Israelis, we have no trust in that, and we cannot put our security in the hands of others. But I think this is a question to be asked in your countries where you come from. The countries who have helped facilitate the 1701. What does that mean when Radwan can come so close to the border? This isn't the case for Gaza because there is no UN Security Council resolution granting this. On Gaza, just agreements with countries that after we removed all of our forces in the disengagement that Sharon did, then of course Israel has a grant to defend itself and we can do whatever is needed. Well, so it is a very difficult situation. I don't think that there's a clear solution to it. What I gave you is kind of thinking of how to do this. Is we need to fight Radwan. And eventually we'll need some kind of arrangement south of Lebanon. And if not, then unfortunately we may go to war with Hezbollah as well, but not in the same time with Hamas. Let's do this first. Let's have the people in the south go back to their homes and create this as a precedent. Israel should push for a DMZ in the inner circle of Gaza to extend the buffer zone where militants cannot come from a shooting range from our communities. There are a host of things that we need to do in Gaza. And once we do them in Gaza, then maybe we'll have a precedent for the north. We'll see.
So maybe even just to continue the same, line of thought, like maybe Israel should take advantage of the few days of truce or of ceasefire to, move forward in Lebanon and to create a aggressive move of its own in Lebanon to deter Hezbollah now.
So, I wouldn't recommend us opening another front. I think I was consistent with this from the outset. Engaging in a ground maneuver in the north is difficult to do while we're engaging in a ground maneuver in the south. And if indeed in a few days we continue what we're doing in the south, then I think this is not a real opportunity to be taken because it will take definitely more than 4 or 5 days of ground operation to push Radwan up to the north. But that's an interesting idea, Ali. Maybe we should think about it. And see how to play out with that.
Okay, Daniel Esrin from NPR is saying again that you didn't answer his question about Sinwar's strategy. Maybe you can expand on that.
About Sinwar's strategy?
Yeah, for the next stages. If you have any, estimate what he's going to do for the next stages.
Yes.
And for this deal as well, what's his strategy?
I didn't answer because I don't know. I mean, I think that in the place where I need to be humble, I thought we had an understanding what's in our thinking was, and this was so wrong the first time. I can only give cliches as answers, like he'd rather die than rule Gaza and other things that won't help you understand the situation on the ground. I think that Sinwar will try to make the best out of the situation. I think he will try to bargain for the hostages the best way he can. Clearly, he will keep the soldiers to the end as bargaining chips. But it will, I will be able to respond to that answer after I see the women and children back, because at this stage I'm not even sure that this will happen, even though there's an agreed deal with him. So let's keep that for next week and see how things evolve.
Okay, you spoke about the return of Israelis to their homes, next to the border, next to Gaza. How could this happen at the moment? Are they going to stay in hotels? We know until the end of the year, but what afterwards? Do you know? Do you talk to people and what's going on there?
Yeah, so I talked to people. I met family that we have that miraculously survived this massacre of October 7, and I spoke to them, I spoke to others, and we get the same answers from everybody. Those who live in communities close to the fence won't go back as long as there is unstable security situation. And unfortunately, I understand them. We have failed them. We have failed the families. We have failed the communities, the kibbutzim, moshavim, the towns. and it will be difficult to ask them to go back without proper security arrangements. This is why I mentioned the DMZ before. I know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It means that we're going to take a part of. There was always a perimeter on the internal side of Gaza, but it wasn't wide enough and it wasn't enforced properly. We'll need to do more for that. The IDF will continue to interdict in Gaza even after we remove Hamas from Gaza. Of course, before that, but even after we remove Hamas from Gaza, if we'll have intel about a group that is planning to attack Israelis or to go after the civilian pragmatic leadership that will hopefully emerge in Gaza, we will need to interdict as well. This will take a long period of time, and only time would regain the confidence of the people in the government. I have to say that having spent time in Israel, the people are frustrated not only for the security dysfunction, they're also very much frustrated for all of the other dysfunction of the ministries of the government, of the fact that they do not get basic answers to their concerns and to their needs. A lot of things will need to be done to regain the trust of the people in the government, in any government in Israel, but clearly security will be first.
Okay, now after this ceasefire will end, do you see Israel, going back to fight Hamas again to get rid of Sinwar, as you said before? And do you see any way that Israel has enough international credit to continue its operations as it did so far?
So first, Eli, this isn't a ceasefire. This is a truce, and I think the words matter. We're not close to a ceasefire, at least as far as I'm concerned. I think we will get international support for that. This is what I'm hearing here in Washington, and this is what I should think that we should expect from others. And Israel needs to make the case very clearly about this. We need to take care of the humanitarian situation in Gaza. We need to engage about conversations about what will happen after we are able to eradicate Hamas from their ruling role in Gaza, for the future of the Palestinians after we are able to do that. All of those are important to get legitimacy from the international community, from the American administration, to continue fighting. But yes, this is what I expect. If this ends just by getting 50 something live hostages, women and children, and that's it, this is nowhere close what we should do, and we can do much more. I think the goals that the government has put are realistic. I don't think they're realistic in the time frame that they described, and clearly it is not happening in the time frame that they describe. But we will need to fight until we reach that.
Okay, I want to go back to something you said last week and also to something you had in your opening remarks today. You talked about the ship that was, abducted by the Yemeni Houthis. And last week, when we spoke about missiles being launched to Israel as a direct, attack on Israel, you mentioned the fact that maybe Israel needs to consider attacking Iran as a response. But now, when the Houthis are actually going against something which is in international waters, do you think still think actually this is the right answer for this?
So I think I remember what I said. It was not. I did not recommend going after Iran at the moment. What I said is that Israel should not go after the Houthis directly, and in due time we need to go after the source of that, which is Iran, and I still think that. Look, what's happening in the Arab Sea, around Bab al-Mandab, around Yemen and Oman and all of the others. This is bad for international commerce. This is not an Israeli problem, even if this ship belongs in some way to Israeli owners. And the responsibility for international waters do not rely on Israel. This is one of the missions of CENTCOM, and I'm sure that there are deliberations in Washington about what that means and what they should do. I think the Saudis should be worried about the fact that the Yemenites can abduct such a ship. This time it's something they did with an excuse about Israel. Next time it will be an excuse with the Saudis. What will happen to Saudi tankers shipping oil when they are abducted by Houthis? Who will they blame then? It's very clear who's behind all of this. This is not the point in time to talk about this. Israel is preoccupied with Gaza, and I continue to hold the same position. We need to finish this first, and then we need to address other issues. And also, and I'm talking to international reporters. when a ship is abducted off the shores of Yemen, I think this is an international problem. I think the ship has a Dutch flag, if I'm not mistaken. I think the team comes from Mexico and Philippines. I think all of the countries need to ask themselves, what does that mean for the safety of trade? What does that mean for the safety of crews, of civilian vessels? Israel must have a role in this, but Israel cannot provide security to ships so far away from our shores.
Okay, maybe we can finish with another question related to the international community. We saw lately several, people talking to the international courts, international tribunes, specifically also regarding sexual attacks against women during October 7th. From your experience, from the things you've seen in the past, is this something that actually could move anything in the international community? Does this have a chance?
I'm not sure that I'm the person to ask that because my trust in the international organization is very low, unfortunately. And the little that I have eroded completely as national security advisor. I was national security advisor for a government that, by all standards, was the complete opposite, not only politically, but I think also in the mindset of this government. And we got the same kind of approach. The number of votes against Israel and any of the UN entities was higher than any other country, and with such a large margin that whenever people talk to me about the double standard of the Americans at the moment, why do they support Israel and not support Hamas and other international community? I mean, come on, double standard. We're talking about Israel here. Is there any forum in the international organizations, including of the UN, where we're not prejudiced and before we even start talking about the details? This is the fact. I have no trust in that. Having said that, of course, I think that what Hamas has done, if that's not war crimes, what is? If sexual abuse, decapitating, burning people in their own homes while they're tied. Some of you have seen, I'm sure, the videos of the atrocities that happened on October 7th. If this is not war crimes, what are war crimes? Do I have expectations for that? Unfortunately, I don't. But it should happen. Maybe there will come balance to the world. Maybe people will call spade a spade. Maybe the fact that they are considered weak doesn't make them good, as some of the progressive thinking is attributed to Hamas. I would like to see more condemnations of against Hamas as a terror organization. I would also like condemnation to the slogan "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which the meaning of that is that death to Israel and let's remove all of the Jews from the Holy Land. Everybody who's supporting that is conducting war crimes. But I'd love to. I need to live to see some kind of balance in international organizations for Israel.
Okay, Dr. Hulata, thank you very much. This was very
You're welcome.
clear. And we hope to see you again and to see everyone again next week.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. May we hear some good news soon.
Amen. בשורות טובות. Goodbye.
Amen. Goodbye, everyone.